Faster than writing to a letter forum, more thoughtful than angry clickbait, able to discuss the world's first superhero in comics, film, TV, and more, it's the Supermaniacs! And we're gonna have a super time today. We have so much to talk about. Our big topic, the upcoming James Gunn directed Superman movie coming next year. But also, we have Superman and Lois coming to an end, and a ton of great Superman comics coming out from DC right now. So I'm very happy and very honored to be talking about Superman with Michael here. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Everything is coming to an end for the CW verse tonight, and I'm very excited to see how it all ends with Superman and Lois.
Yeah, are you currently caught up? Did you see the last week's episode 9?
Yeah, I made sure to try to catch up for the ending because it's bittersweet because I've loved the show so much, and knowing it came to a quick end, unfortunately, is depressing. But the season's been so enjoyable that I'm just like it can end on a high note. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, totally. And we've talked about this before, but the CWDC shows, as great as they can be, they all tend to overstay their welcome. They tend to kind of decline in the later seasons, but Superman and Lois has not only been consistently great all 4 seasons, but I think the last 2 seasons were probably the stronger 2. And I was very impressed with season 3, and season 4 definitely seems to maintain that same level of quality. There's just so much heart that goes into this show, and I feel like a lot of effort too.
There's the showrunners show that they really cared about the source material as well as being able to play with the source material in a way that is engaging because of the fact that a lot of the stuff is still uncharted territory, especially when it came to the twins. Because even though there were stories with like the superhero kids, there weren't twins in Superman's world, kind of thing, and so it made for a very interesting dynamic that I've only seen once before that, and I'm very happy with how it played out, especially with the way Jonathan's arc ended up, because in the beginning you felt like Jonathan was just like, I'm the non-powered kid, and he's just kind of like, it felt like they were pussyfooting around it, but then once we finally got to where we are now, you're like, everything works from beginning to end to me.
Speaking of that with Jonathan, the show has done this great job of kind of keeping me guessing as like a seasoned Superman fan. Like I kind of think I know where things are going to go, and then they kind of swerve, and it's not in like an annoying way. Like, oh, why did you do this wrong? It's always like, oh, I'm so glad that you gave me Bizarro when I thought I was getting Doomsday, or like something like that. The show always has like these kind of twists that I don't see coming, but they always feel right. And Jonathan was a big one. I remember watching the first episode thinking like, oh, Jonathan is going to be the kid with powers, and I guess Jordan will be the kid without powers maybe, and it turned out it was the other way around. But then, eventually it does give you that stuff that it kind of teased to begin with, like Doomsday or like a superpowered Jonathan. The show is so good at like having its cake and eating it too.
Yeah, everything set up in the very first episode. You're like, this guy's clearly Lex Luthor. He's got this power suit, and he's clearly wants to kill Superman. And then the greatest thing happens, and then where it's like, that motherfucker wasn't Lex Luthor this entire time. That dude was Steel. And the worst, not the worst, but the craziest part is that the name of his episode where it's revealed is called Man of Steel. Never occurred to me that they're like, hey, dummy, this is what we're doing. Never occurred to me until the episode was over, and I'm like, you son of a bitch.
But even there, that's another great example where they tease this cool, Luthor power suit, and it's like, okay, well, it turned out to be Steel. That was kind of cool. I didn't see it coming, but it would have been cool to have like a live action Lex and like a power suit like that fighting Superman. But then we get to season 4, and it's like, hey, have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, and like you said, the Bizarro thing, like you're expecting it to be Doomsday, and then it's not Doomsday, and it's this amazing Bizarro interpretation, and then they're like, but what if it was? You're like, wait, what? And it's just, I'm fascinated by what they've done with this series, and then they keep throwing stuff at me that I'm just like, I know where this is going. It's like, no, you don't. I'm just like, oh, no, I don't.
Yeah, it would have been so much fun to get more seasons of this because they have just been so consistently good. But I can't be sad about it a show ending when it's still in its prime, when it still like knows how to do what it does well, and you don't have to get that kind of, oh, did we really need like a seventh, eighth season of this show? So
Yeah, it's like the Flash. When the Flash started, I was like, "This is one of the greatest things I've ever seen." And then season 3 happened. You're like, "That wasn't super good, but it's still not bad." And then season 4 happens, and you're like, "Oh, this is not great." And it was the same thing with Arrow. Arrow, you're like, hey, this is not bad. Season 2 is like, yeah, this is pretty good. Season 3 is like, yeah. And season 4 was just garbage. And that was like consistently what was happening to most of the shows, except for ironically enough, Legends of Tomorrow. That one started off bad, and then it got really, really good because they're like, we don't have to do anything. Like, we don't have to follow anything. Let's just be batshit insane. And then that ended up working from then on because it was like an American Doctor Who almost because of it.
right, yeah, that show kind of became like unrecognizable from what it started out as, but also it got more interesting too.
Yeah, because they finally like. I feel like they figured out what Superman and Lois also figured out, which is that the canon doesn't really matter that much if your story is entertaining. And that show, Superman and Lois, has done a really good job at making you understand these characters in a way that no other thing is allowed to because of the fact that he's married, has 2 kids, doesn't live in Metropolis. Like, I think that really worked out in their favor.
Yeah, well, we are recording this for those who aren't live with us right now on Monday, December 2nd, the night that the series finale of Superman and Lois will air. That's going to be the first thing I do tomorrow morning when I wake up is watch the series finale on the CW app. But it'll be fun in a couple of weeks. Mike and I plan to get back together and discuss the ending of Superman and Lois and just talk about like that show in more detail and kind of have a big SNL love fest because we
Yeah.
both are massive fans. But there has been some other good stuff coming out in November. We got some really great episodes of Superman and Lois, like the stuff that they've done with Lex, the stuff that they've done with Doomsday. I see some people complimenting like the CGI Doomsday. Like, oh, you can even have them like run around like in daylight and like broad daylight with like good lighting, and the CGI still holds up. It still looks great. And for a show that cut its budget, it doesn't really show in season 4.
They've done a really good job with what they were able to do because that's the thing is that I've always found very impressive about Superman and Lois is that it's kept its visuals for the most part the whole way through because it knew not to go overboard like the way Smallville did when it's like look how
Mm.
gorgeous this looks when they spent like the price of a movie on the first couple episodes and then the later ones you're like oh this is good but it's not like first episode good. This one's like everything's the same. We spent the exact same amount of money essentially through most of it until season 4 hit, and even then, like they're whoever their CGI people are, they let them work and let them take their time with it because Doomsday looks amazing.
Yeah, the shorter seasons probably help. They're only having to do 10 episodes this season, so also in November we got that really cool Absolute Superman #1 that if people didn't catch the Supermaniacs #2, we spent a lot of time talking about it. Um,
Yes, and I did finally get my copy in the mail, so
awesome.
I'm just gonna get a frame to get it framed.
I'm looking forward to reading issue #2, which comes out this week. That's very exciting.
Yeah, the issue 2s of the other Absolutes came out. I read the Wonder Woman one, and that one's still really good. The Batman one I haven't had a chance to read still. I meant to, and I just had to get around to it. But I'm really liking the Absolute universe because it's really different from what we're used to.
Yeah, I finally read Absolute Wonder Woman #1 because it finally showed up on the DC Infinite app, and I liked it just as much as the Batman and Superman ones. So all three, I'm only one issue into all of them, but so far I'm a big fan of what they're doing.
It's funny because the one that I like the least is the Batman one.
Yeah, and that was such a good issue. Like I felt like, oh, like Scott Snyder did, like he wrote some really great action sequences, and the art was phenomenal, and yet the Wonder Woman one and Superman one I liked even more.
Yeah, and that's not. I'm not saying the Batman one's bad, by the way, guys. Before you guys at me, I'm just saying that like it's interesting to have the big three, and for the first time in a while, be like, no, the Batman one's just okay compared to the rest of them.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean it's not a great issue, but it's like great issue, amazing issue, and like just fucking oh my god, I can't fucking wait kind of thing. But I'm a Superman nerd, so that's a bias that I understand. But the one is amazing. Like, so that just shows how good this absolute universe is, and I can't wait to see what other heroes they eventually end up doing with it. And I don't know when those will come out, but yeah, I'm
Yeah,
very excited.
but Flash and Martian Manhunter of all people, but the art on Manhunter looks really cool. So
Oh, it's fascinating. That's the absolute universe is coming together very well, and I love the fact that it's a dark side like energied universe essentially. Because I love Darkseid. Darkseid's a great character.
well, he's if you're gonna have to have a big bad, he's kind of the biggest and baddest one to choose from.
Do you think Superman and Lois would have done it?
Well, I know that they would have done Brainiac apparently because we have a guy named Milton Fine running around in season 4. So
That's true.
I feel like for Doomsday, if they did have like a 10 season plan, a 10-year plan, and why wouldn't you? It's a CW show, so
Yeah.
uh, you would save, I think, Doomsday for your last season.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was surprised how quickly they brought in Doomsday, but Darkseid.
I'm sorry, not Doomsday, Dark Side. You'd save Dark Side for your
No,
last
yeah,
season.
I can't think of a single. There's only one other live action Darkseid besides the Snyder one, but even then, they're very coy about that one. Wasn't really a live action one per se. It was the Smallville one, and it wasn't
Right.
really. That one was weird. That one
Yeah,
was
didn't he
really
like
weird.
he turned into birds or something like that?
Yeah, because he
Right?
was like a shadow thing that didn't have a form that looked like Darkseid, but then it like inhabited Lionel Luthor at the last second. He just had a giant head, and then he just exploded
But
because Clark flew through him.
I think you could do the Jack Kirby Fourth World New God stuff on a TV budget, taking a similar type of approach to what Smallville did, but do it good. Like Grant Morrison had some of those comics where he kind of had the New Gods reborn on Earth as like these like characters on Earth, like I'm trying to
I can see it.
remember what all they were like, but I think like Doomsday, like I keep wanting to call him Doomsday. I think Darkseid appeared as kind of like he's kind of like a mob boss. He was kind of like almost what how Superman and Lois handled Bruno Mannheim. He kind of like looked like that, I think.
Oh,
But
okay.
they kind of did like these very like Earth versions of the New Gods, and I think you could probably adapt that into live action pretty easily on a TV budget.
There's a lot of ways around it that you can do very well. I think Darkseid's one of those ones that's like tricky because of what he is, and also like you don't have to do because the new 52 one is the giant one. A lot of newer people are like, Darkseid's this gigantic guy. And I'm like, no, he's like the size of a normal like large. He's like Shaq size at most, kind of thing. Like, but he was never supposed to be like the size of a small kaiju kind of thing. The new 52 did that, and so you can easily do a normal looking size Darkseid, but nobody seems to have done it outside of the Justice League movie.
Yeah. Well, maybe someday we'll get like another crack at it. Maybe James Gunn will attempt Dark Side someday. I do want to get into talking about Superman 2025, but before we get to that, just let me ask you: were there any other November Superman comics that you read other than Absolute Superman that you might want to talk about?
There was one. I'm trying to remember what it was. Sorry, right
We
away.
we had the I'll see if I can refresh your memory on anything, but we had like that final issue of the My Adventures with Superman comic that came out.
Oh, that's right. No, I really liked that way that one was because of the because it takes place before the show or the second season of the show started.
Between season 1 and season 2, right?
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that for what it was, and because it was this nice, fun, like a little adventure of his, and it added more to the Kryptonian backstory about like what they were up to, kind of thing, as well as just like Superman showing off that hey, like just because you're made for evil or whatever doesn't mean you have to. And I thought that was it's very sweet. It's a very sweet thing for them to do. And then I guess the other one is it's not really a Superman thing so much as that Superman is in it. It's the insane multiverse story that they like tie-in that they've been doing because it's just a fun, stupid time, and he's a lot of fun in it too. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's that fighting game. They made a
Multiversus, right?
yeah
Is that what it's called?
multiverses. Yeah, they made a tie-in comic, and so it's like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are like trying to figure out what's going on. So they end up meeting Bugs Bunny, Scooby Doo, all these people, and it's just a ton of fun.
All your Warner Brothers, all your Discovery Warner IPs,
Yeah, exactly.
like Shaggy and Scooby Doo.
It's just so much fun, especially because Bugs Bunny is just batshit insane in it.
Well, speaking of Superman team ups, there is also Batman Superman World's Finest number 33 that came out in November. That wrapped up that Eclipso storyline with the Justice League.
It did.
And
Have you been reading World's Finest?
I'm behind. I haven't read that arc yet, but I've been really digging that for the last couple of years. That's been one of my favorite comics.
It's a great little story because it eventually involves the JSA, which is what was why I ended up really liking it. When it cuts to them needing them to help defeat Eclipso, and it also shows off more of the impressiveness of Superman because there's a point where something gets destroyed and they're like, "Well, we need this to stop them," and he just grabs it and rebuilds it right away. He's like, "Okay, I got it. We're good." It's like, "Oh, okay, let's do this then."
Did you read Justice League Unlimited number 1, also by Mark Waid?
I did not. I meant to. I read what was it? I read DC All In that like mentioned it, but I don't think I read that one specifically.
Yeah, but it ties into to All In, and basically they're the new Justice League series. Looks like they're going to do what the cartoon did with Justice League Unlimited and really like broaden the roster.
Yeah, that was the thing that I was really excited about because when they were talking about making it, they're like, "Who's your favorite characters?" And then they're like, "Whatever the answer is, they're in the Justice League." I was like, "Oh, okay." Because yeah, like you said, it's the way Justice League Unlimited was the actual show because that's what was great about that show is that you were like, "Hey, who's your favorite Justice League member?" It's like, I don't know, like Superman, Batman. Like, wrong. It's Vigilante. And so Vigilante would show up. You're like, actually, he's really cool. And it ended up introducing people to a lot of different characters they normally wouldn't have known about because of the way the show worked. It being like everyone's here. And I thought that was such a fantastic idea. And I'm happy that somebody finally was like, why don't we do that in a comic book forum?
That is another very exciting thing about James Gunn taking over control of DC live action stuff. Well, of just DC everything, honestly. But he says that he's very much a fan of the like Bruce Timm DC animated universe.
Oh, really?
And so he wants his. If we ever do get like an established Justice League in the films, like he wants it to be kind of like how the cartoon was.
That would be such a great because that show is such a great not blueprint for what you can pull off in a story involving the DC characters because it pulled off what I feel like Avengers did live action and animation because before that it was always like Super Friends. It's just immediately they're all together kind of thing. Same with even Teen Titans because Teen Titans just starts with them all together kind of thing. But that show or that starts with Batman the animated series, and then it's very very grounded, kind of almost realistic, and then it opens up a whole new world when Superman shows up, and then they make even Batman stranger with the new adventures of Batman, I think was the name of it, and then it all culminated in the Justice League, and then from there it was amazing. It just took off from there.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought about that, but yeah, those are like the only two examples of them like building up a shared universe and building up to the big team up team.
Yeah, because everything else was just like immediately, like because even when they did that new 52 um, animated movie universe, because they all of those connected, it also started with just Justice League War. So like immediately you're already there. So they didn't set it up like, and I know they were trying to do that with this. With the Tomorrowverse was what it was called, but they gave up like halfway through.
Yeah, they've already like crisised that off, but I mean that's okay. Now we're going to have shared continuity between animation and live action, and they can still do like an occasional Elseworld story whenever they want. So I really like the position that that Warner Brothers has finally put DC in. I'm always kind of terrified with David Zaslav running the show because he'll do really mean, terrible things like delete an entire Batgirl movie from existence.
Yeah, that's the only thing that worries me is because sure James Gunn is in charge of the DC things, but at the end of the day, Zaslav has to be like, okay, do it. Like he can at any moment he can walk up to James Gunn, he'd be like, this is a great. You got to scrap the whole thing because I need a tax break real quick. And it's just like, oh fuck, like you're just kind of fucked from then on. Especially with how there's existing shows that he just takes off just for residual reasons. Like it's not even a tax break; he just takes them off of Max. So imagine the shared universe. Like imagine Creature Commandos coming out, everybody loves it, but Zaslav's like, yeah, but I don't want to pay the animators or anything, so he just removes it, and then you're just stuck without a large part of your cinematic universe.
Yeah, that's so scary. And I hope that it gets a Blu-ray release. You know, My Adventures with Superman, we talk about this a lot, but it only got DVD and no Blu-ray, and that is terrible for a show that great.
Yeah, I know Harley Quinn had the same thing, but eventually it got a Blu-ray. I'm fingers crossed the same thing happens for My Adventures, and I hope to God they don't scramp on the last season of Superman and Lois because season 3 took like a year or two to come out on Blu-ray, and I was losing my mind because I was just like, where the hell is this goddamn Blu-ray?
Yeah, and I haven't bought any of that show on physical media, but I'm hoping for a big box set of all 4 seasons, get the complete series on Blu-ray. But
it would be cool if they did that, but it had new special features too, because that would be enough reason for me to buy it again. And because I love having those. For some reason, season 3 didn't have a digital copy though.
oh, that's a bummer.
It's very strange.
Yeah, like everything tends to include digital copies these days. A lot of people, that's just like all they buy. They just don't even buy the physical media, but they'll still buy it on Amazon or Apple or something. Just to
Some shows just don't even have the option for physical, which bums me out. Like New Girl, I can't buy New Girl on like Blu-ray. It just doesn't exist. Kind of thing. I can only buy like the entire series in like digital form. But I'm lucky that Superman Lois has not had run of that issue. Same with a lot of those other shows that come. Like I have all of the DC animated universe stuff Bruce Timm did on Blu-ray because luckily those all came out on Blu-ray. The only thing I don't have, I think, is the Zeta Project, but nobody remembers the Zeta Project.
Yeah, I never bought that. I do. Some people might know about this, but I set up a Facebook page a couple years ago when Batman the Animated Series turned 30, and whenever a new episode is on like the 30th anniversary of when it aired, I'm sorry, whenever one of the BTAS episodes on their 30th anniversary is always go and like post about it. And my plan is to, when I get to the 30th anniversary of Superman the Animated Series in 2 years in 2026, I'll start doing Superman the Animated Series also, and I'll probably do like Justice League when I get to that. But like, I don't know, maybe Static Shock. I didn't really watch that, but yeah, the Zeta Project. I'm not posting about that just because like I still have never watched that show. It's weird that it's part of that continuity.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who watched that show. Like, I barely know it exists because it's a part of a Batman Beyond episode.
Well, there's a YouTube channel called I think it's called the Watchtower or Watchtower Database, where they're just like big fans of that JLU universe, and they love it. They they make a ton of videos about the Zeta Project. So
I had no idea. Yeah,
but
the Static Shock one is interesting because of its many crossovers.
Yeah, they had like Batman and Joker show up in an episode. I know.
Yeah, one of the Superman episode is a continuation of a Superman the Animated Series episode as well. Also, it's the only show that gave Superman his blue eyes.
Oh yeah, he typically has like the black dots.
Yeah, it's actually like jarring because of it, because he's just this animated series but with blue eyes, and you're just like, this is weird to look at. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's odd. I didn't. I guess I've never seen that. I've seen some of the Static Shock episodes, but not all of them.
I recommend the Superman one if for anybody who's ever watched the full series of Superman the Animated Series because it's the end point of a Toyman episode.
Okay, and I love the Superman the Animated Series interpretation of Toyman.
Yeah, it's great. And so there's an episode later on, I think it's towards the end, where Toyman made essentially like a living Barbie doll, and then the Barbie doll gains sentience and then wants to be its own person. That episode's finale is in Static Shock, technically.
Well, let me ask you about Superman 2025, as I guess I'm calling it. But we have a release date of July 11th next year. I see in the live audience, Movie Magic is talking about the trailer should be coming out this month, so I'm very excited for that. He also says apparently All Star Superman's an inspiration. And yeah, I mean, I feel like every Superman adaptation for like the last 10 years, well, except for like the Zack Snyder ones, has had like a little bit of, well, even that, David S. Goyer, I think, put some All Star Superman in Man of Steel. Some of like the dialogue from Jor-El, I think, was straight up lifted from All Star. But
It's such a famous story that I love that he took so much inspiration from it, and the fact that he's very serious about this trailer, and because I
yeah,
heard that he might not have been happy with the first version of it, so I'm interested to see what ends up happening with that trailer. And then, did you see? I think it's a poster. I don't know if it's a real poster or not. This drawn one.
yeah, of David Corn's wet Superman like stopping a train or something. That
Yeah,
was yeah, I
I
guess
kept
like
seeing it everywhere.
James Gunn said like, okay, that's not official. Like the artist like posted it and like here's like an official poster from that Brazilian convention that they're doing. I
Oh,
forgot what it's
okay.
called, but
Oh, so
that
it's
big
like for
that
the
big con
convention
in
itself.
Brazil, yeah.
It
But
looks really cool though. It's like a really nice interpretation of what he would look like.
yeah, no, it looks super cool. But just the little bit that we have seen of that movie, there's a lot of images online of the suit of David Cornswet in the suit. We have that official poster where he's looks like he's putting his boots on,
Oh yeah.
um, which I love that poster. I know a lot of people were kind of critical of it. They're like, "Oh, it looks like there's like lasers attacking the city in the background. Why is he like taking his time putting his shoes on or something?" But I looked at that and thought like, "Oh, he's showing us like the first thing that Gunn wants to show us about his Superman is like, okay, this guy is he's just like us. He still puts his shoes on one at a time." And
Yeah, it's just like you can tell it's him doing his job. He's like, this is a job for Superman, and
yeah,
he's it's clear that he's already been through some shit. Because that was the other thing. That was the other reason why people were critical of the suit originally. It was because the suit was like a darker blue, but once you really look at it, it's like, oh, because he's clearly just got out of a fight. Because the suit's kind of messed up looking when you really look at it. It's kind of dirty. And so he's just like, yeah, this is just, it's like you said, he's like everyone else. He's not invincible. He's not like, oh, I'm happy go lucky. He's just like, ah, fuck, kind of thing. Like he's putting his boots back on. He's gonna go back out there and protect the world. And I think that's really fun. That visual. And it's just, God, I'm very excited for it.
I'm thinking the trailer might even like incorporate some of that imagery. Like, what if the trailer it shows Superman and he he's dealing with like some stuff as Clark Kent, but then the city's under attack or something. He's got to become Superman. He's got to put his game face on, and you just have like that kind of slow motion bullet time sequence of like, okay, let me like get my boots on and go out here and fight some space shit or whatever is going on. The never ending battle.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what the trailer decides to focus on because there's plenty of things it can focus on. One is that it can focus on Superman himself, like, hey, I'm here, look at how awesome I am, flowing cape, that sort of thing. Or it could focus on the idea of hope. It can focus on like people reacting to Superman and then having a final shot being Superman or something like that. Or it could even focus on what we know of the plot, which is that like there are other heroes in this world who might be not acting the way we expect them to. And so that could be another focus point of like, here's the world. Here's why it's a big deal this guy's here kind of thing. Like that's why I'm so excited to figure out what this first trailer is going to be. Like I know it could very well just be like a teaser trailer that's just like him standing there in the cape or something. So that's what makes it so exciting. We have no idea exactly what it's going to be.
Well, the movie is 7 months away, so I'm not expecting like a very long trailer, but I think we might get something like a little bit more than a teaser. We might get like some idea of the plot, but I think because they've already shot everything, and I know there's going to be a ton of effect shots to do on this movie, but it sounds like they've already done 2 test screenings, and that comes from like Gunn himself. He was on social media saying like, "Oh, I'm so excited to go out and see our second test screening." So there's a lot of completed footage. But what you're talking about with all the other heroes that are in it, I mean, just the ones that we know of, but we know that we're gonna have Hawk Girl, Mr. Terrific, Green Lantern Guy Gardner. I am really excited for that, especially with
I'm very
Nathan Fillion
excited.
playing him. Metamorpho, Supergirl is gonna, or maybe not Supergirl, but at least Kara Zor-El is gonna be in it, and Rick Flag Senior.
Which is their connection to Creature Commandos, because he's
Right.
supposed to be part of that, which I think is fascinating. That's what they, because he meant it when he's like, all of this stuff's connecting. I was like, oh, that's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Also, I'm curious because I know he's very hush hush about what happens with Peacemaker season 2 here. So whether or not that will connect to anything that's going on too, I'm very interested to see how that plays out too.
Yeah, so the new the DCU, as they're calling it, their new shared universe, which I think is a little confusing because I don't know. To me, like the DC universe of the comics is like whatever's currently going on in the mainstream comics. To me, like that is like the DC universe, right? That's the DCU, but that's the name that they're using instead of. I guess they can't call it DC Cinematic Universe because that's too copycat of Marvel.
Well, yeah,
But
that's the hard thing, because I remember when they did the Snyder one, it was the DC EU,
EU.
which I was like, that's a weird name, but I get why you did that, because like you said, it would be like, but DCU still sounds even more like a ripoff than DCEU did, or DCCU, because like, does that mean Detective Cinematic Universe? Like, is that what that stands for? Because that's the only thing I don't know. Like, I don't know what you would make that stand for, but like outside of, like you said, just the DC universe. Because yeah, I have the same thought process. DCU is the DC universe. Like it's because everybody likes doing shorthand. Because MCU, MU, that sort of thing. The MC2, like, which is Spider Girl's universe, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see if that sticks correctly. If that makes sense. I don't know. Like, I'm very excited to see what Gunn does with the whole thing. And this, I like the thing I liked about the Snyderverse is that it starts with Superman, and I like the fact that this starts with Superman as well.
Yeah, that's the way that. I mean, well, I guess Marvel had a lot of success starting with Iron Man of all characters, which was kind of crazy, you
No,
know.
no, it's super crazy.
But yeah, with DC, he is the anchor being, to use a Marvel term. I just rewatched Deadpool and Wolverine the other day, so that's fresh on my mind. But yeah, he is the anchor being, as Hugh Jackman was to the X-Men universe. That is what Superman is to any interpretation of the DC universe, in my opinion.
Well, he's the man of action, and actually, he's the action in Action Comics, and so I think that's why I always thought it was weird that DC stuck and not AC kind of thing, because Action Comics is what starts everything. So, but like God, I can't help but be excited about the fact that he went out of his way to make sure that so that everybody's chemistry connected, and that's something that the DCEU is definitely needing all around.
Yeah, they took a long time like announcing who they had cast as Superman and Lois because it sounded like they were doing like a lot of like chemistry testing when they were auditioning, and they finally settled on David Cornswet and Rachel Brosnahan. Is that how you say her last name?
I think so.
But they both look great. Like in the images that we've seen of them on set, they look fantastic as the characters. Everyone really looks like who. Like if you just gave me a picture of some of these people, like, oh, here's this guy, Skylar Gasondo, I'd be like, oh, he looks like a Jimmy Olsen. Or that you can kind of Michaela Hoover as Cat Grant. So I love like the looks of all these people. The one that kind of surprised me was Jonathan Kent. They went with this actor I'm not real familiar with, but Pruitt Taylor Vance. But
Yeah,
he's kind of
he looks like a farmer, like an actual
yeah,
farmer.
yeah. He straight up like looks like a guy who'd be working on a farm. He's got that. He's a little bit more heavy set, but he's got like a a balding head and like a goatee, but he looks like okay, he's like a salt of the earth farm worker type guy.
That was always the funniest thing about watching some of the older ones where you're like, I buy those guys as farmers sometimes. And then you look at that guy, you're like, oh, that dude, that's all he does. He probably only eats corn half the time.
I was just thinking that okay, James Gunn is directing the Superman movie. He's gonna get Kurt Russell to be Jonathan Kent, and then he didn't. So now I'm like, we don't know who's playing Jor-El. There's a lot of speculation that uh, Kurt Russell is gonna be Jor-El. So he's gonna be like a space dad in two different James Gunn movies.
I actually would love that because Kurt Russell would not be a bad Jor-El kind of thing. But the hard thing about Jor-El is that you need somebody that you can take in many different ways. One, you would understand they're smart. Two, that you could somebody would respect them, and three, that they could be capable of kindness, kind of thing. Like if you got somebody like say James Woods, you would be like, no. You'd be like, that dude couldn't be Jor-El because that dude's clearly a crazy person, kind of thing. Russell Crowe, like, luckily was past his crazy person time frame, so you were able to believe that he was able to do that. But if you had hired Russell Crowe at the peak of him beating up people, you would not have believed it.
I kind of like an actiony Jor-El though. Like I love Superman the animated series opening with Jor-El doing like action science in caves and trying to escape from dangerous alien critters, and so he's kind of like an alien scientist, Indiana Jones type adventurer type scientist.
Yeah,
So
I'm a big fan of Adventure Jor-El. That's one of the reasons I like the DC, the Absolute Superman Jor-El when we see him, is he wasn't afraid to get into like this dark cavernous area to check up on his science. And then even the Russell Crowe one, he was like, I have a suit of armor. Kind of
yeah,
thing.
like he fights Zod. He fights to the death against Zod. So
And it's great, and like I love that. Like I know Marlon Brando Jor-El's, everybody loves him immensely, but there was always something off about Marlon Brando Jor-El to me. I don't know, like there was just like I guess he felt too full of himself, if that makes sense. But I think that's the Marlon Brando acting radiation, if that makes sense, like the aura Marlon Brando gives.
do you remember the Jeff Johns Gary Frank Action Comics Jor-El when they drew him with a beard in those?
Yeah,
Like that's how I would picture like the Kurt Russell Jor-El looking. Like he would look like Gary Frank's Jor-El.
I could see that. He's like a fusion of Marlon Brando and like comic book Jor-El is what he was going for, if I remember correctly. I would personally love to see a Jor-El that clearly like loves everything he's doing, like loves his wife, loves everything that's going on around him. That was the thing that I loved about the animated series one, is that it's clear that those two really loved each other, and that when and that when Krypton explodes, they're hand in hand, right next to each other, just being like, if it ends, it ends together. And I hope something like that happens in this universe, because that was the bummer part of the Snyder one, is where that Jor-El just dies before it all happens. Spoiler for a movie that's very old at this point.
Yeah, I think we're okay on that one. But I do think that Jor-El and Laura will have a large role to play in the movie, even though we don't have any actors announced as who's playing them. Just based on some of the quotes from James Gunn, like when they originally announced that he was going to be directing this movie, they were calling it Superman Legacy for a while. They dropped that and they're just going with Superman, which I think is appropriate. But he was saying that it would be a story about Clark having to reconcile his Kryptonian heritage and also his heritage as like the kid who grew up on a farm in Kansas, and taking like both of those things and incorporating both of them into his identity was the impression I got from some of the stuff Gunn was saying. So it'll definitely be in there. We're gonna get some Kryptonian. We're probably flashbacks to Krypton. So
What are your thoughts on what you want presentation wise to be when he talks to stuff for Krypton? Do you want it to be like the Snyderverse, where it's like a straight up hologram that like he can walk up to, talk to, that kind of thing? Or would you rather it be the way the original movie is, just a big old head, puts in a thing, and talks to him, that kind of thing?
You know, that's an interesting thing because you don't want it to completely undermine like the tragedy of him losing his world. You know, if he basically has like, oh, here's like a ghost of my mom or dad that I can just, talk to whenever and just, answer any questions I have. It's really convenient for a lot of the TV shows. Like, they did that with Jor-El a lot in Smallville and with Laura a lot in Superman and Lois. But I kind of would prefer if it was more of like he just has like a recording or something. Like he just
That's
he
what I really liked about the animated one. Is the animated one the only thing he had was originally the recording that he's given by his that was in the ship. That's like, hey, we're your parents. Like, we love you. Like we're happy you're alive, kind of thing.
mhm.
That was all he had. And then I like the fact that his version of like the knowledge thing was the Brainiac orb. So it wasn't like his dad being like, "Here's how things were like." It's a Brainiac voice being like, "So I'm going to tell you the most cold possible way of what your world was like." So there's no like warmth to the explanation, which does add to the tragedy, in my opinion, to what like him learning his heritage. It's like if we were learning our heritage through Google Voice, like text to
Right.
speech. It's like that. That's what I found interesting about the animated series version of him learning the knowledge of Krypton.
But I think that would probably be kind of a common experience for, like for refugees who are like, yeah, like all my family died, but I can still learn about all this stuff from, books or whatever. I can go like read about it at the library, but it's not the same as like having like the voices of your ancestors, actually like converse with you.
Yeah, there's I don't remember if we talked about this or not. There's it's in the Superman Wonder Woman storyline where he meets Zod. The New 52 Superman meets Zod for the first time, and he's talking to him in Kryptonese, and Zod's like, "Hold on a second, like he's like you learned like you're speaking our language, but you sound like did you learn that through the stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "How did you know?" It's like, "Because you sound robotic with the way your accent is, because you don't have an accent, and
Yeah,
it's kind
that's
of
not a Candor accent.
like you're just saying things that you've heard," is what he was telling him. And I like that. That's what I want. I want him to like learn about his heritage in a way that's like, I read it on Wikipedia kind of thing. Like Kara should be the one that's like, I know everything and I can explain everything kind of thing. I've always liked the idea of Superman not really having every answer at the palm of his hands. Like My Adventures of Superman did a really good job with that too.
Especially knowing that Kara is going to be part of this universe and that we'll have like an active Supergirl movie coming in 2 years in 2026. She can kind of be the voice to be like, okay, Cal, let me tell you, what it was like living on Krypton and stuff like that. So he really doesn't need to have like the personalities of his parents preserved.
Yeah, and that was always the thing that was annoying about the holograms, even with the way Laura is, especially the way with Laura is in Superman and Lois. It's like, yeah, I'm just your mom. Like, we're just gonna talk and converse as if I'm alive right now.
Yeah,
It's
like the
like,
boys talk about going to the fortress is like, yeah, it's like going to grandma's house, So,
yeah, like, hey, grandma, how's your day? And she's like, well, I've just been here at the fortress. It's just like, no, you're a hologram. You're not supposed to be able to do all this.
yeah, so I think that undermines the tragedy of having his entire planet lost, and the fact that they're doing a version of Superman where Ma and Pa are still alive, which I think is great. I love those John Byrne, those Lois and Clark, those Superman the Animated Series moments of, Superman can fly back home and sit down at the kitchen table with his parents and, talk about his problems. I love that. But he doesn't need that and Kryptonian ghost holograms also.
No, and that was always the issue I had with later Superman things, is the fact that they're like, what if he had the knowledge of everything at the tip of his hands? Because then you have a lot of questions that you start questioning. You're just like, how come he doesn't just like solve all medicinal issues? Because you could just be like, hey, Drew, what's the cure of cancer? It's like, well, you see, he just points to this thing and gives it to him. Like, I know fucking like the non-interference thing be damned. Like, I don't see Superman not being like, so here's the cure of cancer. Like, I don't see him not doing that. Like, no matter which way you look at
Right?
it. But so him having just the knowledge of the entire universe, or not universe, but the entirety of Kryptonian knowledge, I could see Jarrell being like, yeah, here's the cure of all these diseases we know about, and him like fucking with that. But like, it would make more sense for him to not have any of that stuff. Like at most, like you said, a message from him with like, hey, we're your parents, you're Kryptonian. Here's what we know about your powers, most likely. Good luck, kind of thing. Like that, I think that's more interesting. Like it's because it becomes the baby, it becomes the almost the Moses allegory, where like Moses didn't automatically know that everything about his heritage. It was essentially a note in a basket kind of thing, and I think that's more interesting than like as if he was given like an entire family album full of memories and shit with him kind of thing.
So I'm starting to think, just talking this over and thinking about it with you right now, but I'm starting to think that maybe the catalyst of the story will be Supergirl's arrival on Earth.
Actually, that's a fair point. I didn't think about that till now. Like maybe that's what really triggers like his like an existential crisis of his like heritage versus himself.
And I
Then
almost wonder, like, we don't, like, out of the bad guys that we know are going to be in it, Lex is going to be in it, and he's going to have Miss Tessmacher, like in the original Superman the movie, 1978. He's also going to have an Otis sidekick. But we don't. Maxwell Lord, played by Sean Gunn, is going to be in it. But we don't have like any powerful opponent for Superman that we know of. It could be like a brainwashed Supergirl, or like some type of antagonist version of Supergirl. Like they've done that in comics and animation multiple times. So I'm wondering.
I wouldn't mind that, to be honest, only because it hasn't been done in that much in live action, and usually it's and the way things are right now, it's the opposite because of Supergirl being the show that started first. And so I'm curious to see if that becomes a thing, and two, if there's a surprise villain that we just don't know about. That would be really cool.
I mean, there's also been a lot of speculation about Jason Momoa is going to play Lobo now, that he's not going to be Aquaman anymore in this new DCU, which I'm thinking like he should have always been Lobo. He's obviously, if you're going to put Jason Momoa in the DC universe, he's Lobo.
Oh no,
I
yeah.
actually like his Aquaman. I think his Aquaman movies are really fun, but it's like that dude is built to play Lobo.
Well, yeah, one, that dude's built to play Lobo. Two, his Aquaman was just kind of Lobo as Aquaman.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
And two, like if you're not gonna bring back everybody, like if you're gonna bring back people, make them somebody else. Like don't, because then you start comparing them to everything. Like so, like if they had brought back everybody from the DCU for the Superman stuff, as much as as much as I wish Henry Cavill was allowed to do it again, everybody would have just been like, he's not Snyderverse Superman. He's like, everybody would be comparing him. The same with Lois, the same with Lex, same with Ben Affleck if he came back. All those guys. So it's like, yeah. So, but if you did bring them back, I wouldn't mind Ben Affleck showing up as like Commissioner Gordon or something crazy.
Oh,
like
that's
that.
a good idea. That's a really good idea.
Like there's so many ideas that you could like if you to keep these people but make them somebody that they would be great as, kind of thing. Like that would be like, I've said it out loud as a joke, but I legitimately wouldn't mind that.
I mean, DC kind of has a habit of doing that anyways. They'll like recycle actors as like different characters. You're like the dude who played Aquaman on Smallville ended up playing Hawk on Titans, right?
That's right. And then the guy who was Aquaman in the TV pilot was their Green Arrow in Smallville.
Yeah. So the guy who plays Metamorpho in this movie, Anthony Carrigan, was, I think, someone on Gotham.
He's Oz in Gotham.
Okay. So
The only reason I remember that is because I looked him up because it was when Barry started, because I'm a big fan of him because of Barry. And I was like, what else has this guy been in? He's like, oh, he was Victor Zsasz this whole time. So he went from like this very menacing bad guy to like kind of a funny mobster who eventually becomes a menacing bad guy again. But like that shows that guy's range. That guy's got hella range. And I'm very excited.
I'm really excited for Metamorpho. Metamorpho's never been attempted in live action anything ever before.
No, and especially because of what he looks like. It's not an easy thing to do, no matter which way you'll do it.
Yeah, so if people don't know who we're talking about, Metamorpho is a DC superhero character who's normally depicted as like the head of a bald guy on a body that like he'll have like one leg is orange and one leg is purple, and it's like he's like made out of like different chemicals or different elements, and he can like
Yeah.
rearrange his he's basically like chemistry man. He can turn the different chemical compounds.
He's a fascinating character, which is the reason why he's so fucking difficult to do. And like
He's
I'm
also pretty
surprised.
OP. He's
Yeah.
very OP. He can turn into like damn near anything. So
Him and Firestorm are like that. They're two very OP characters that when a writer gets them, they're like, how do I make him not be OP? And I'm curious to see what they do with that in this story.
right, like if you want to talk about characters who can take Superman in a fight, just Firestorm can just turn all the oxygen in the room into kryptonite.
If you wanted to, yeah. It's crazy like how many of those characters because a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of these characters, a lot of the characters in whatchamacallit, in Watchmen were based on characters that eventually became DC characters.
Right, the
And
Charlton Comics characters.
yeah, and Captain Atom was the same way. And so there's so many of those characters that are like, yeah, these characters were designed to be very OP, but they had to like tone them down once they became part of a DC thing. That was the funniest thing about watching the Flash when they brought Firestorm in. You're like, how come none of you guys can win? Firestorm's right there. He should be able to take care of this. It's no problem.
Yeah, and you can kind of nerf Firestorm depending on like what character, what version of Firestorm you're doing. Just being like, oh well, he doesn't know the chemistry well enough to know
Yeah,
how to transmute all the elements. But
that was the thing I did like about Firestorm was they're like, you can do anything. He's like, yeah, but I don't know how to do everything.
I'm really excited about Guy Gardner, Green Lantern. Like Nathan Fillion has we've been wanting him to play like a live action either Hal or Guy or like anybody for years. Like before the Ryan Reynolds movie came out, he was the guy everyone was fan casting for that.
Yeah, and he leaned into it hard because he got to do voice for
Hmm.
Hal every now and then, not super often, and but when he did, he was perfect every single time. And they finally were like, "Hey, be Guy Gardner," and you're like, "I have no qualms with this because you have the ability to do both of those characters very easily."
And honestly, like I thought that Nathan Fillion should have been Star Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy. I ended up like I liked what Chris Pratt did with the character. But I always thought that like because Nathan Fillion had that relationship with James Gunn and they were in Slither and all kinds of stuff together. Uh, I didn't feel like the MCU really like used him. It was really funny in I guess Guardians Volume 3, but I feel like Nathan Fillion like deserved to be a recurring character in the MCU, and like that never happened. But I'm glad he's getting a prominent role in the DCU.
It is the thing that bummed me the most about how the MCU was because I think it came down to age a lot of the times. Because I'm not saying like that sounds weird considering how old Robert Downey Jr. was when he played Iron Man from beginning to end, and also coming back as Doctor Doom. Whereas, but for some reason, Nathan Fillion just did not take off the way we all wanted him to. Like he made that Uncharted short film, and then nobody wanted, they
Mm.
didn't put him in that. And then I feel like he didn't do Star Lord purely because they were like, he's probably too old for what we're going for now, kind of thing. But I would have loved for them to have done the Wonder Man thing they wanted to do with him, and then sure we're getting a Wonder Man now, but have the idea of Nathan Fillion as Wonder Man was really a fun idea, but just nothing ever came of it, unfortunately. And yeah, he really deserved to be like somebody in that universe, whether it was a side character or a superhero. Like I'm still shocked that he was not put into anything in that universe. Same with like some of the other people that Fillion knows, like Alan Tudyk and those guys.
Well, Alan Tudyk is supposed to be in this movie in some role. We don't know what, but Alan Tudyk is in Superman 2025. He's also three different characters on Creature Commando. So
That's
he
true. He does really good voice work, and so it's possible some of his characters are just voices.
yeah, he's gonna be Clayface in Creature Commandos. But I think it'd be really fun to do like a live action Clayface who can morph into any character. But I think it'd be funny if it whenever Clayface like shapeshifts into someone, the voice is Alan Tudyk doing like an impression of that character's voice.
That was the thing I liked the most about Alan Tudyk's Clayface in Harley Quinn is that's exactly what they did the entire time. Like he never was like I'm a perfect version of this
Right.
character. It was just Alan Tudyk being like I am Wendy, the college girl, and it's just like what the fuck.
It's like the really pretentious actor, but you do a more grounded, realistic version of that in the live action DCU. I say.
Yeah, no, and it could be done that way. There's so many characters that I would love. I've had pitches for certain characters that like I would love to do. Like onomatopoeia, for instance. I've had a lot of ideas for onomatopoeia for years that I would love to see one of these days.
Yeah, I always thought that would be a hard one to adapt, just because like the gimmick of that character. For people who don't know, they basically like whenever they cause like a comic book sound effect that is visualized in the comic, as like they shoot a gun and has you have like the sound effect letters say bang. The character actually says in dialogue the word bang, the onomatopoeia of everything, and that's kind of odd to do in live action, but I really like what they did with Superman and Lois. Speaking of that
They
show with that
they did do
character,
an interesting thing with that, but my pitch for onomatopoeia is so simple. I'm amazed nobody's ever done it, which is that you basically get Michael Winslow from Police Academy and make
yeah,
him like a creepy serial killer stalker kind of thing. Like have him in the dark, and if you hear these sounds like just in the dark, like from like a Michael Winslow type guy doing, like just have Winslow doing the sound effect parts. Like he doesn't have to play the actor himself, and just like make him a creepy fucking dude. Like there's so many ways that you could do that with onomatopoeia, but no, that he's not going to be in. As much as I would love for him to be in the DCU, I don't know if anybody will ever be able to pull that off the way I want him to, at least.
you got me curious though. Suggesting like maybe we'll have a surprise villain because I am hoping the trailer will show some action that they will show. Superman actually throwing a punch. That was the famous like Kevin Smith criticism of Superman Returns. Like that movie had a lot of heart, but he doesn't throw one fucking punch the entire movie.
Yeah, that was the issue a lot of people have with Superman stuff. Not just that, but like in a lot of the live action ones, because he's not like for some reason they just wouldn't give him villains to fight correctly. Like Superman 2 was the only one for a long time that was an actual the one
Well,
villain in the comic.
Superman 4, come on. We got Nuclear Man and
No,
Superman
well,
4.
I was gonna say one villain in the comic and that he fights, or Superman 4. Yeah, I like Nuclear Man a lot. I've made it on my own record as saying I love Superman 4. I have the comic adaptation behind me somewhere. You can't see it, but it's on the top shelf, I think, over there somewhere. I bought it. I literally bought it because I wanted to frame it. But no, Nuclear Man's great. Nuclear Man actually shows up in the
In the
there
Bendis
was
comics.
no there was well outside of that they they made him canon in the CW verse because there was a Superman and Lois like single issue thing they did where it shows him fighting Nuclear Man in it in like this little montage of him doing stuff. And I'm like, oh my god, Nuclear Man's like fucking canon in the CW.
I haven't read the Superman and Lois comics, so that really makes me want to read them now.
Yeah, because it's I forgot what it is, but it's like a moment where it's like a montage of him doing stuff, and one of them is him fighting Nuclear Man. I'm like, I am so happy right now.
This is going to be a Superman who, we know it's not an origin story, and Gunn has even said there's not a young Clark actor, so we're not going to have like flashbacks to his childhood, it doesn't sound like, which is exciting. We've seen that story told so many times, but it sounds like because he is an established hero, he's probably already encountered a few villains, so we might be seeing like a Metropolis that has had like a few Superman villains rise and fall already. So I'm curious, just who would be some characters you'd be happy to see as kind of if we are going to get like some villains in the trailer.
The prankster. I know it's a weird answer, but I would love to see the prankster show up in some sort of Superman movie. That would be so funny.
Give us Superman's. I guess he's kind of like Superman's Joker / Riddler character.
Yeah, but he's like a slightly more harmless version of them. He's still dangerous, but he's not like, oh my god, he's gonna kill all those children dangerous kind of thing. Like I would, God, it would be so funny if like it starts with him just getting fucking pranked. Like it would be like as if it was like you remember Screwball from the Spider-Man stuff now.
Yeah.
Like you could do prankster by but make it like a
Oh, like
Screwball
make him
type
a
thing.
troll. Yeah, make him like an internet
Yeah,
troll or
make him
something.
like a guy who has like a TikTok who just keeps
Yeah.
fucking with Superman and like
Oh, I would
pranking him
love
all the
that.
time. Like that's the way you modernize prankster.
And we're getting a Booster Gold show in this new DCU at some
That's
point. I think
true.
I think that needs to be like the depiction of Booster Gold is he's trying to become an influencer. He's trying to get followers online.
Yeah, that was the thing I liked about Smallville was that it kind of played with that idea before it was a thing where he has like all the ads on him kind of thing. Like there's so many stupid villains I would like to see because that's the thing is you can't go too hard on the villains right away because you want it to be like he's been doing this for a bit but not like, against Parasite or something like right away. Like Bruno Mannheim would be perfect for like an early time frame. They'd be like Superman stop Bruno Mannheim or something in the background or something like that, or even Toyman in some versions, because Toyman is because Superman the animated series made Toyman super fucked up, but he's not normally that fucked up right away, kind of thing, and so that would be fun.
There's also that
And
really creepy depiction of Toyman in Brian Azzarello's Lex Luthor Man of Steel, I think is the
that's
name of
right,
it.
yeah.
Which Gunn has said that's going to be kind of an influence on Lex, is kind of like that version of Lex.
Oh, I love that because I love that comic so much because it's such a good example of the unreliable narrator storyline. Have you ever read it?
Yeah, but back when it came out, like, I don't know, 2018 years ago, it's been a while, but I remember it pretty well. I remember that being a creepy as hell toy man, too. But
Yeah, and my favorite thing about that comic is you seeing Superman through Lex's
through
eyes the
Lex's
entire time.
eyes.
He just looks like a crazy person. And you're like, oh, I get why you're scared of that guy. That guy looks like he's going to murder you at any given moment.
That comic is very similar to the recent Penguin show in that, like, it can kind of get you on, like, the side of this villain, and you can kind of empathize with them right up until the very end, and then you're reminded, like, oh, you are actually, like, a really twisted bad person.
Yeah, the ending twist of that story is so like it's not heartbreaking so much. It's just like you're like, man, I kind of was on your side for a little bit here, only for you to, do something Lex Luthor like, because you forget he's Lex Luthor. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. You do things for yourself, even if it doesn't make any sense to anybody but you, kind of thing. And that's what I like about Lex. Lex is the kind of character. He's like, I'm right no matter what it is, even if it doesn't make any sense. It's still Lex Luthor's plan, and at the end of the day, it works. But everyone else be damned.
And I think it was Nicholas Hoult who's playing Lex Luthor in this movie. I think it was him. It might have been someone else, but I read someone say that Gunn wanted to lean more into kind of the 1950s, 1960s. I think the word that they used was a reckless scientist version of
Oh,
Lex.
I love that. I love everything about that because I feel like we don't get enough of that version of Lex anymore. Because ever since Burns Lex, a lot of the depictions are, hey, I'm businessman Lex, and I business. You can't
Hmm.
prove I did anything fucked up. Business, kind of thing. And I'm like, I want because this is what I liked about Birthright. Birthright was the middle ground. It was like he is a businessman, but he's clearly a bad scientist in the background, kind of thing. He's doing crazy, stupid, insane shit, and I want more of that kind of Silver Age. Like I have created weapons of war that don't make any sense, but to me, kind of thing. Like giant robots, like evil snakes, that kind of thing. That would be fun. Like I want people to understand why Lex Luthor was Superman's arch enemy for a long time because everybody's thought process is the businessman, but he wasn't like that for the majority of his existence.
Yeah, and in this day and age, it's really easy to hate billionaires and root against billionaires. When we have like the wealth gap, the way that it is and stuff. But the
Yeah.
the the thing with like our real life billionaires is, like the more I hear people like Trump or Elon Musk talk, it's like, oh, all of you guys are like really stupid. and
No, yeah.
and Lex needs to be very smart. He needs to be an evil genius. So I like the mad scientist approach more than the billionaire approach, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing that Lex needs to do more of to separate himself from other depictions of him. I know Snyder kind of tried to play with the idea, but his version was more of a hubris thing when he creates Doomsday, because he's just like, yeah, I'm doing this to stop Superman, and you're like, but what if he dies? What do you do after that? And that's a hubris thing, and same with even a lot of the stuff with the DC universe, the DC animated universe one. It's a lot of hubris things. He doesn't really go full mad scientist until Justice League starts, and then, you know, Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor, was a real estate guy for some reason. Like he did like some mad scientist stuff, but for some reason most of his plans involved real estate. And then I liked kind of the way Superman the anime, not those, sorry, Lois and Clark Superman Lex Luthor was, but he wasn't really a mad scientist either. He was full businessman doing evil businessman things. So we need more of the mad scientists from like Super Friends era, weird wacky shit. Like I'm going to block the sun because fuck you kind of thing. We need more of those weird plans.
And he's gonna have an Otis though, so I like that. We have actor Terrence Rosemore is playing Otis.
What are your thoughts on Otis, like the character?
I mean, you, we get some good comic relief, I guess, in the Donner Superman movies with them, and then I guess everything else is just kind of like a member berry, like, oh hey, remember Otis, you know? But uh, I mean, I liked that they got some fun use out of him. Well, I don't know if I'd say fun, but they got some use out of him in Superman and Lois, and New 52. Lex had an Otis, and what was that? Crime Center. The Earth 3 invasion. Was it Forever Evil? Is that what it was
Oh
called
yeah,
in New
for
52?
yeah. Yeah, Otis is
Weird.
one that very. I remember they did Otis for a little bit during his President X days, but then it turned out he was Martian Manhunter in disguise. I was like, okay, that's neat, I guess. But
Like,
oh, I always like the idea of Otis, and I like the fact that he's a character that for some reason it stood the test of time for like zero reason.
say that about Martian Manhunter. I think there's some lag issues.
So when the President Lex story happened, do you remember that stuff?
Hmm.
He had an Otis, and it turns out it was Martian Manhunter in disguise the whole time.
Okay, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it shows up in the Doomsday part of that storyline. But yeah, but goddamn, yeah, movie Otis is so much fun. I
I
love him
like
so
him
much.
because I'm a stickler for you're supposed to say Lex's last name as Luthor, not Luther. It's Luthor is how you
Yeah,
say it. And Otis was always like, "Come in, Mister Luthor." Like he always like really like stressed the Thor part of it. So
yeah, and the way he just did things was always so adorable. Like when he's showing off all the new town names he came up with for his real estate
but yeah,
scheme.
Otisburg.
Otisburg, and it's like Otisburg, and then I love that fucking Arkham Knight has an area of Gotham called Otisburg in it, and I'm like, oh my god, I love you guys. That's such a deep cut.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. I've played all those Arkham games, but I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, if we get a chance, look it up. You'll find that Otisburg is part of Gotham now.
We don't know how big of a role Maxwell Lord is going to have in this movie, but Sean Gunn is going to be, I assume, like a recurring character in a lot of these DCU movies. So maybe he'll be kind of like the big bad of. They're not calling it Phase One because that's too much like MCU, but it's called
Yeah,
Chapter One. This is this is all going to be Chapter One gods and monsters, which is a very like James Gunn thing to say because like he talks about like he likes he kind of has like that Guillermo del Toro thing of like, oh, I love monsters, I love monster movies and stuff. But if you look at stuff like Slither or like Starro and Suicide Squad or like the butterfly things and Peacemaker, he's definitely kind of into like the horror monsters. Like the very first DCU thing he's doing is a Creature Commandos animated show, but like that notion of gods and monsters, that's actually a quote. I've heard that a lot, but I wasn't sure where it came from. But the that comes from the Bride of Frankenstein movie. The mad scientist in that movie like has like a toast to like, oh, here's a toast to we're now in the time of gods and monsters. So that's kind of an interesting way of describing your DC universe. Where the time of gods and monsters is about to begin.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the fact that he's leaning into that because it shows one that he wants to remind people the DC universe is fantastical. It's always been
Mm-hmm.
fantastical. That was the issue I had with the most popular versions of the DC stuff is that it's always grounded. It's always like, oh, this could be happening in your backyard type of thing. Batman could just show up in the middle of Austin one day kind of thing. It's like, no, I want this I want the universe where you're like, is that a giant monkey that shoots kryptonite out of its eyes?
Yes, that's what
like,
I'm screaming.
like I want the DC universe to be funny. I want Turtle Man Jimmy Olsen. I want weird shit
And I
to
think
show up
Gunn is gonna
again.
give that to us. Like he's the guy who, oh, y'all are doing Marvel movies. I'm gonna do the one that has like the talking tree and talking raccoon.
Yeah. He made that normal in the Marvel universe. Like, because I remember when that movie got announced, I knew not no one, but very few people were like, yeah, talking raccoon, that's never gonna work. Talking walking
Yeah,
tree,
a lot of people were like that.
yeah, a lot of people were like that. There was and then that movie came out, and everyone's like, Rocket Raccoon's my favorite character now. It's like not even a week ago, you're like, it'll never work. But now you're like, oh, I would love to meet Bradley Cooper and only talk to him about Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are skeptical. Like, oh, do people really want another Superman movie? Like, oh, or is it going to be possible to do like a DCU kind of shared universe? And it's like, y'all are talking about the guy who made the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, not only work, but one of the most popular Marvel series ever. Like those three movies, like the box office gross on them, like
Yeah, he beat every movie that came out that year that was comic book related because everybody was like, "Oh, the comic book slump, comic book movies are dead." And Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was like, "Bet," and it made so much money so fast.
and everyone loves Peacemaker. Like Peacemaker, who the hell thought like Peacemaker? Oh, you're talking about
Yeah,
like the obscure Charlton Comics characters earlier, but yeah, like okay, if you can make Peacemaker into a household name, I think Superman's gonna be okay in your hands.
like I don't know how he did it. I still don't know how he did it. He grabbed Peacemaker, and he's like this guy who loves freedom so much that he's just a crazy person, and he made an entire season that I was on the edge of my seat for the entire time. You fall in love with those characters because he understands how to make likable characters, and that's what is missing from a lot of not only from the DCU movies, but even from MCU movies. There's so many MCU movies where you're supposed to like Aquafina and Shang-Chi. I'm like, I'm supposed to like that character? Kind of thing. And then, when you watch, not Man of Steel, but like Batman versus Superman, you're supposed to like Lois and Clark together. I'm like, I don't even think they lived. I don't even think they're in the same room sometimes that they like each other. Like, this is not working for me. And same with a lot of other characters, but he understands how to do that with even the smallest characters, like Cosmo, the dog, the talking Russian dog. That dog is just in the background of a lot of stuff, but I still love that character. Same with Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck's on screen for 5 seconds, and I'm like, I want more of that guy.
And look at like Suicide Squad. Like so many of those characters, they were set up in like the previous Suicide Squad movie, and yeah, then when I see like, oh, here's like Gunn's interpretation of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, or Viola Davis as like Amanda Waller, I was like, oh wow, like y'all could have done that like in the last movie, like
Yeah, when Rick Flag, I'm like, wait, I like Rick Flag now. Like, how did that happen? Because I saw that first Suicide Squad movie, and I didn't care for anybody in that movie.
but then when you see him die in the Suicide Squad, you're like that final line, like, Peacemaker, what a joke, it's like you cannot watch that and not be moved.
You're heartbroken because you understand what has just happened. Is that good lost in that exact moment, and I think that's fascinating. Gunn somehow can make you so invested in something you didn't think you would be invested in with so little to do. Oh my god.
What you were mentioning a second ago about wanting a DC universe that's not grounded, that is allowed to be fantastical, it makes me think of the great comic book writer Grant Morrison had a really cool quote about you shouldn't try to confine these incredible, fantastic heroes to the mundane confines of being realistic or being grounded and being tethered to our real world. Like let them soar, let them fly, let them have like their fantasy world to exist in. And I think like the trick to that is the other thing is like you just have to have like just have to have the heart there. You just have to have, even if the events are extreme and fantastical, the feelings have to ring true. And that's what Grant Morrison says about Superman is, he has the same problems as any everyday person. They're just magnified. Like, when he walks the dog past Jupiter. And speaking of the dog, we haven't mentioned Crypto, but we're getting
No, we've
Crypto
not.
in this movie.
Yeah, and that's another great example of him finally being like, "This is a fantastical world. This is a dog that can fly. He can shoot lasers out of his eyes. He can catch a ball halfway across the world if he wants to." And God, I've never been so happy to find out that crypto exists in something.
So I think maybe Crypto and Kara both are going to be like new arrivals on Earth, and so part of it'll be like Superman having to like, how do I like train my dog not to like destroy the city when he's trying to play fetch with me, and also like what do I do with like this young teenage girl from Krypton? I'm just assuming that it will be about like his wrestling with his Kryptonian heritage versus his human heritage, and we know that both Crypto and Kara are going to be in it.
Yeah, and yeah, God, I can't. The more I talk about it, the more excited I get at the DC universe because we know he's the fact the Suicide Squad had Starro in it as its main villain, or it tells me everything I need to know about Gunn as a person when it comes to the DC universe. And the second that he announced Crypto was going to be a part of this universe, I was like, I'm not surprised at all. All I am is very excited to see how he makes that work.
And the a lot of really cool Superman writers and artists were like invited onto the set. Like Mark Waid, who we talk about a lot, Joshua Williamson. Both of the current Superman writers were there, but
Yeah,
also Gunn is like friends with Ostrander after doing the Suicide Squad stuff. But like I think maybe Dan Jurgens was there, but all these people got to see so much like the behind the scenes stuff, and they're like, "Wow, like this guy is doing something like really cool." And Mark Waid was even like, "Oh yeah, I'm excited! Like Crypto is in this movie. That's so cool." So
yeah, and he's willing to thank everyone who's involved in these stories that he loves. He made an initiative to re-release whole storylines that are very important to him as a DC reader in like these really cool $10 digestible editions. Like he is doing everything you possibly can do to elevate not just the movies but the comics and the writers and their artists. And God, I can't help but love him for that.
yeah, no, I have so much respect for James Gunn for respecting the comic source material and not leaving that behind. And it's really cool to have like that same guy also be in charge of not just the movies and TV and animation, but also video games. And hopefully we have like a lot of synchronicity with all that stuff. And if DC is successful in the coming years, we'll have I think the better the stuff does, the more cool tie-in stuff we get. The more people go see the Superman movie, the more likely we are to get video games set in this DC universe. Uh, we need to at some point talk about just do like a show talking about Superman video games. I keep bringing that up, but
Yeah, there's so much about the DC universe that James Gunn's going to do. We know so much about it. We've seen so many set photos of it. My favorite thing about the set photos is everything is so practical. There's so many things you look at that are so just they're
mhm.
real. Because I get depressed looking at MCU behind the scenes stuff lately. Because it's just like I'm Spider Man. It's him standing there in a green suit, with a bunch of dots in a green room with like a couple like chairs or something like for set design, and you're just like, man, this is like because your brain's always like, oh, I would love to be on the set of a superhero film, and be like, oh my god, look at all these cool things, these fantastical things, and now it's just people in green suits that they just animate things of. Like the Green Lantern movie, people were always just like, why would you make an entire suit CGI for Green Lantern? That's the standard in the MCU now, kind of thing. And then, but then you look at Gunn, and the reason why people have been able to make cosplays of Superman so easily is because he's standing there.
Yeah,
He's
because it's
real.
real. Yeah.
He's like, I've seen set photos of Superman where I'm just like, that dude is a real man. That guy lives. He's alive. He's a living, breathing Superman. Like if I saw that on the news, I wouldn't, and they were like, Superman's real, I probably wouldn't have questioned it.
And I love that. I know a lot of the movie was shot in Atlanta, where there's like MCU does like almost all their stuff in Georgia. There's just like a lot of like studio sound stages and stuff there. But they went and shot a lot of location stuff in Cleveland, Ohio, of all places. And Cleveland has like a lot of old architecture that like a lot of Cleveland was constructed around the same time a lot of New York was constructed. So there's like a lot of you get like that East Coast type of architecture a lot, but also like Superman's creators, Jerry and Joel, were from Cleveland. So that's just kind of cool, like to tie it back in there. But I mean, that's one
Yeah,
of the
and he made
reasons why
sure
so many.
everything has like a set dressing. Like you can walk up to a building and be like, "That's a real building." Like
Mhm.
I don't have to feel like you've CGI'd the Daily Planet, and I think that's fascinating.
That's one thing we haven't talked about at all is like the Daily Planet crew. There's like a lot of those people have been cast. We know that Ron Troop, Cat Grant, Steve Lombard, Jimmy Olsen, Perry White, all going to be in this movie. Uh, Gunn was saying that there was a lot of fun, like working with those actors. So I'm expecting like they'll all have pretty I don't know like significant roles, but we'll get some lines from all of them. They're just gonna be like blink and you miss it, like oh like that cameraman who died is Jimmy Olsen type stuff like Zack Snyder did.
Yeah, I'm excited to see a lot of those people be done in a way that's never been done before. Like Ron Troop, as far as I know, does not exist in most other live action shows because he's not that important
This
to
will
a
be
lot of
his
people.
his first. My Adventures with Superman gets a lot of fun mileage out of these people. I do
Yeah, they
they
do.
gender
Yeah,
bent Ron Troop to Rhonda Troop, I think. But
yeah, I think yeah. And then it's their version of Steve Lombard is my favorite version of him, and I hope the movie version of Steve Lombard gives him a run for his money.
you're speaking of like All Star Superman. Grant Morrison used all these people then. Um, so yeah, I mean, Superman has a very likable, natural supporting cast that would I think seem obvious to a lot of storytellers, and it is unusual that yeah, like Superman Returns and Man of Steel and a lot of the other adaptations like didn't really like lean into it. So I'm glad that Gunn is doing what has seemed obvious to me for a long time.
What always bothered me about the DCEU one is that it looks like they were about to. Like when you watch Man of Steel, like they put heavy importance on Steve Lombard because he's there, he's the balder guy, and his relationship with Perry, and then there's the intern as well. And the way that movie ends, they're all like, "Oh, we're all friends and stuff," and you're expecting it to become like a thing later on, and it just never does, and it just bums me out because it's like, yeah, why don't you play with that cast more? There's so much fun to be had with that cast, and My Adventures of Superman really pulled it off. Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman season one, really did it too. Before a lot of those actors didn't come back, kind of thing. So that's just like there's so much potential in these side characters that the movies need to remember to do. Like that was my issue with every MCU film. They like when Happy Hogan just sort of started fading in the background. It became Iron Man became less interesting, and the same with all the other side characters in all those movies that they introduced. You're just like, well, the human element is missing,
Hmm.
and that's what the DC universe has been able to do better than the MCU, or not just the MCU, but the Marvel universe as well, because it's willing to keep its characters human at the end of the day. Like everything's fantastical, but they're at the end of the day, he's going to talk to Jimmy Olsen about a hot dog.
Jimmy Olsen had some great stuff in the current season of Superman and Lois. By the way, like
Oh yeah, he's so much fun in that. I love the countdown for his money.
I was talking about Superman and Lois, but also like yeah,
Oh
My
wait, no,
Adventures
sorry.
with
Oh,
Superman had some great Jimmy stuff.
sorry. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, no, he is in Superman Lois. I was very happy that they had that they had Jimmy in that in Superman Lois. I was worried they would never show him.
Right, I was too. Or, well, I think they had mentioned him like early on, and I was at the time I was picturing uh, the sexy James Olsen character from Supergirl because at first we thought that they were in the same universe.
Yeah, I was expecting McCall Brooks to show up, and then when they're like, "No, this is a different universe, so it's not going to be him," because it's going to be I don't know the actor's name, but when he showed up, I'm like, "Well, that's Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah,
That is a Jimmy Olsen ass Jimmy Olsen."
like I wasn't expecting to get some great Jimmy Olsen scenes in the last season of Superman and Lois, but they snuck it in there, and so I was happy they did.
I'm very happy with the fact that they also remembered he's very human supporting cast because that's the other thing that Superman Lois got down depending on who you ask, which is Lana and her family because they're a very human cast and you see their very human problems
Hmm.
and so you end up sympathizing with them quite a bit, especially when it comes to their relationship with the Kents as it progresses, even their own small issues that they have in the background. I know some people didn't like them as they sometimes they felt like they were overtaking some seasons, but that's the thing about comic books is that you have to take the human cast with the fantastical elements that are going on, or else you lose something.
Well, the one last thing I think I have to mention on Superman 2025 is the thing that does seem like a little weird to me that I'm not quite sure what to make of, and I'm kind of waiting until I see and learn more to have an opinion. But the use of the character, the Engineer, is a character from the Authority comics.
That is the weirdest thing is that this is the one thing I'm not 100% certain on is him bringing the authority in, especially like with how things are in that universe, if that makes sense. Because the authority wasn't exactly like happy go lucky. Is the best way of putting it.
Right. It was I kind of similar to like I guess the popular uh, the show The Boys right now would probably be like a common way of kind of explaining the authority. But I guess it was closer to that than like the Justice League. It was kind of this
Yeah, it
a
was the
realistic.
anti Justice League, basically.
Yeah, like if these superhero people were real, what would they actually be like? And what if they were just like they could take over? They could be the authority of the world, I guess.
And yeah, they weren't exactly shy about killing and all that kind of thing. And they had their own Superman. Like they had the analogs of these characters. Like they have a Superman, they have a Batman who are lovers. They kind of thing, and they have all these other versions of characters. And you're just like, how do you reconcile that world with this world? And I know you can do it if you start with that world or if you start it that way. But how do you make that work in your Superman movie? I guess I don't know. Like you said, but the engineer being the one that's there.
And maybe that'll just be a small role that's just to like set up the upcoming Authority movie, which I've also heard rumors it might actually become something animated. It might be like an animated show on Max or something instead of a movie, which that might
I
be a
was
cool way to go with it.
Yeah, actually wouldn't mind that. Not because I don't think it would work as a movie, but because I think it's a nuanced take on superheroes that doesn't work in a short form, if that makes sense.
Hmm. I've never read any of the Authority, but I know like a ton of great creators worked on the Authority series. I'm familiar with those characters when they've shown up in like DC stuff. Like I know Midnighter and Apollo have been active in the DC universe ever since New 52, and some other Wildstorm people keep showing up. But I think I'm gonna go back and read the early Authority comics just to kind of get an idea of what these people might be like in James Gunn's DCU.
I have a friend who he loved Authority as it came out. He actually read them all as they came out, and every time he talks about them, like that's the most batshit insane thing I've ever heard in my entire life. He's like, yeah, but it was great. I was just like, okay then. And I know they were trying to bring the Authority into more and more when they did Superman and the Authority. Well, that was part of the Warworld saga. So that was always I always thought that was an interesting thing. I feel like that was an attempt at bringing in Superman into the Authority world more for this exact thing. I feel, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I liked it for what it was. So yeah.
The other films that we know of that are going to be in the DCU are Superman this year, then Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow next year, and then the other three that they've announced: Batman, Brave and the Bold, which is going to be like a Bruce and Damian movie. That's I'm real curious about that. The Authority and Swamp Thing. So that was I can see why they're calling this Gods and Monsters. You have Swamp Thing and Superman both. So that's your god and your monster right there, I guess. And the Authority is maybe a mix.
I'm fascinated by James Gunn's choices.
And then on the TV side of things, we're starting the true DCU, I guess, starts this week, Thursday with Creature Commandos. So I'm curious to see that first episode, and then next year we're getting season 2 of Peacemaker, and then in 2026 we're supposed to get Lanterns, the Green Lantern show with Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan.
That's going to be an interesting one too, because that's the thing I find very interesting about James Gunn's choices is that, because I know that show was technically announced a long time ago, but it's being refitted. Is the fact that like there are a lot of characters that are starting off much older than they would have been normally. Like Hal's going to be hella old compared to everybody else, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah, so I see some people speculate that maybe they'll actually have Hal become a Parallax and go evil, and
I'd be cool with that.
yeah, I think it'd be cool if like they eventually just did like a Kyle Rayner thing and just like let's just have Kyle be like the only Green Lantern for, since we're probably never gonna have that in the comics again. Let's do that in the adaptations or something.
That would be really funny. I can't wait to see the other heroes that I feel like just did not get anywhere in the DCU. I want to see Green Arrow. I want to see like more of the Flash. I want to see the Flash's villains for once
Hell yeah, yeah.
Instead of just like, oh, it's Reverse Flash again. I'm like, no, I want to see the Rogues. Like, I want to see a literal Rogues team up in a movie. Like, that would be so cool.
Yeah, or give them like a Max TV show, like how they did Penguin. Like, let's have like a Rogue show.
I'd watch that so fast.
Well, anything else you want to say about Gunn's Superman movie or the DCU?
Nothing outside of that. I love the suit. I love the suit so much. I know there's some images of Clark floating around with very interesting hair, but I want to see the Vision in motion. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I love the suit. I love. We talked about bringing the yellow S back, putting the yellow S on the back of the cape. That was chef's kiss.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess that'll do it for this show. Just to remind people, we do have the finale of Superman and Lois coming out tonight, so we'll be talking about that next in a couple of weeks. We'll look back at the ending of Superman and Lois and talk about how we feel about that show. And then coming out in December, we have an issue of Action Comics from Mark Waid every week. Also, Absolute Superman #2 is this week, so very excited to read that again. Listen to the Supermaniacs #2 to get our thoughts on that. There's a Superwoman special coming out this month, December 11th, that ties into Joshua Williamson's Superman series. Batman Superman World's Finest #34 is out December 17th. Superman #21 is coming out on Christmas Day, December 25th, which also sees the release of Mark Waid and Dan Mora's Justice League Unlimited #2. And again, reminder, this week, Creature Commandos starts on Max, so that's some Superman adjacent media there. But, who knows, like they might mention Superman or the Daily Planet, or we might start getting some lore for this movie in Creature Commandos.
Yeah, keep an eye out for all that stuff, guys. It's going to be a very exciting time for us DC fans again.
And people can follow me on socials at TX Trek, where I mainly talk about Star Trek, but sometimes other stuff. And check out my other show, Text Trek. We are live on Friday nights talking about the final season of Lower Decks right now. And you can listen to us on podcast platforms. And I think in January, we're going to be talking about that Section 31 movie with Michelle Yeoh that's coming to Paramount Plus. So if you're interested in any of that, follow the Text Trek stuff. And, Mike, do you have anything to plug?
You can find me on Rage Select. We're on YouTube. We do a lot of just video game bullshitting, really, as well as a podcast that we do video game music, or sorry, video game news on. You can also follow me on Blue Sky at mxriojas. The rest basically, because everything after that's the same. And so you can follow me there as well as sometimes I'm on a site called One of Us .net doing reviews.
Very cool. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks talking about Superman and Lois. And until then, and until we get a better catchphrase, keep it super, y'all.